Hey everybody, welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep 'em flying.
Good evening, airplane fans, and welcome to CAF Warbird Tube. Tonight, episode number 186, and we're going to explore the unique history of a bomber that was purchased by the American people and the PT-23 that carries that legacy on today. More on that coming up in just a moment. Now, whether you're joining us for the very first time or you're a loyal Warbird Tube fan, we are thrilled to have you with us tonight. If you enjoy our content, we ask if you just do us a favor and spread the word on your favorite social media platforms. We do appreciate that. Warbird Tube is made possible by the Commemorative Air Force. To find out more about the CAF, our events, aircraft, local units, or how you can be a part of the fun, visit our website, commemorativeairforce.org. Now, as you're watching tonight, you might have some questions. Just type those in the chat box. We'll try to answer them either during the presentation or before we sign off. Joining us right now, not quite from Washington State, where the Day's Pay Squadron is located, but from New York City, is Robert Wade. Robert, good to have you on the show tonight.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to be here. Appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in the squadron.
Well, I guess my background, I've been a pilot since 2009. I actually got my pilot's license when I was working over in the UK. So I got my British pilot's license before I got my US pilot's license, and then ended up not flying for about 7 years. After my first daughter was born, with my wife's support, got back into it, went and got a U.S. pilot's license out in Washington, and through that process, I ran into all the guys out there, guys and gals at Richland Airport in southeastern Washington, where I was working, and just really great community, very supportive people out there. They were really encouraging, helped me do what I needed to do. Went got my license, and over the years, got some stick time. Ended up buying my own plane, and then when we learned about the new unit initiative, when I learned about the new unit initiative, I think it was New Year's of 2022. Basically called and commiserated with the group there, and we all decided that we should make contact. And I actually, I had heard Leah Block's interview on Fighter Pilot Podcast. Okay. And so I got on the website and I found Leah's phone number and I called her, and that was the first point of contact. And so that was, like I say, that was right around New Year's. By May 1st, we had, I think, 34 people signed up, and we started Day's Pay Squadron. And awesome. And that's when David, Oliver, and the gang started the search for an aircraft for us.
So you had 35 members, May of 22. About a year later, you end up with the PT-23, and yep. Things are off and running.
Yeah. They actually found the airplane in Florida, around about Thanksgiving of 22, and I think by February of 23 they had gone out. It had been sitting static for about 3 years. A fellow named Jim Jansa, it's kind of an interesting story. So a fellow named Jim Jansa, he had actually, I guess, bought the airplane in 1960 when he was a young man in the Air Force, had just learned to fly. And he kept it for a few years and then sold it on. And then later on in life, and I think it was in 2000, he bought it back again, flew it for a while, and then he restored it and then flew it a while So it would have been about some point 2018, 2019. He was having issues with, I think it was the left brake, so he parked it. And being later on in life, once he parked it, it sat. He actually, unfortunately, came down with Parkinson's, and he never flew it again. So I think after it was sitting for about 3 years, I think he had actually reached out to, I don't know if it was Georgia or Florida, but a CAF unit or a CAF member down there, telling him that he wanted to sell it or donate it or do something with it. And just so happened that's when we were looking for a plane. So David had called us and asked us if we were okay with a radial, and the group of guys that I just described at Richland Airport are very much antique airplane guys and radial guys, and so we said, yeah, we'd prefer to have a 23 over a 19 or a 26, so we're all about that. And so they pursued it and made it happen, and we ended up bringing it back to Dallas, doing some work on it. And then it wasn't until August of 23 that our operations officer, George Abbott, flew down, grabbed it, and spent 5 days flying it back up to Washington from Dallas. So it was just outside of Pensacola. It made the Pensacola to Richland run over a series of several months.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cross country. It's one end to the other. Describe for us, because for most people who think about Washington State think about Seattle and the coast, but you're the other side of the Cascades. You are really desert, and it's completely different from the other side of the mountains. But what brought this aviation community together in a pretty hostile environment as far as flying goes?
Well, there's just a really rich history. There's a really rich aviation history in Washington and in Oregon, clear back from, basically the inception of aviation. Pasco. So Richland is one of the three named cities of the Tri-Cities. It's Richland, where we're based, Kennewick, and Pasco. And what it is in the basin, the Columbia Basin, there's three rivers that come together. It's the Snake River, the Columbia River, and the Yakima River. And so the three now basically small cities are the three different, sides of the confluence of those rivers. Well, Pasco was the end point of the first airmail route, went from Reno to Pasco. NAS Pasco during World War II is the third biggest naval training base in the country, behind Pensacola and Corpus Christi. Of course, Boeing on the other side of the mountains, when they were building airplanes during the war, they would build them. A lot of times they'd send them over the mountains to not Richland. Richland hadn't been built yet, but a lot of the airfields in the area. So there's a lot of big old airfields in the area. And then of course, Richland, that area of the desert. So a lot of people don't know that the southeast corner of Washington State is actually a very arid, very hot desert. Very little vegetation, nothing that grows taller than your knees. A couple years ago, we hit a record of 124 degrees at the end of June. Very hot, very dry. And turns out it was the perfect place to build the world's first plutonium production reactor. And so a lot of the industry in that area, there's loads of agriculture. It's actually that east desert side of Washington where most of the famous Washington apples and all the agriculture is, because they irrigate the desert out of those rivers. But it was also a great isolated place with plenty of cooling water and not a whole lot of human activity to test drive nuclear reactor. So that's a lot of why that community is there, and what caused it to flourish 80 years ago.
Yeah. So Hanford was the spot where all of this was taking place. And as you say, 500 some square miles worth of land surrounded at that time by nothing else.
Nothing. Yep.
Yeah. Perfect place to kind of conduct the kind of experiments and work that needed to be done. Security and everything, it was very tight in the Hanford facility, but still folks kind of had an inkling of that they were doing something, but they weren't really sure what their role was in the war. I mean, they weren't building bullets, or they weren't manufacturing ammunition, they weren't manufacturing tanks. They just kind of felt like, what, we're doing something, we just don't know what it is. And that's where we lead up to the airplane Day's Pay, which is a B-17, and the PT-23 is carrying on that legacy. But I'd like to just show a little bit of a documentary here that kind of talks about it and sets up the story. And I think this is a wonderful way. Well, first of all, it's an amazing story that needs to be told more, but also how your squadron is kind of taking that B-17 legacy and bringing it forward, in today's world. So the documentary is called Day's Pay, the People's Plane. It was created by the city of Richland, Washington, for their Richland City View TV channel. In fact, the police department in Richland has created a new badge with the Day's Pay B-17 on it to kind of honor that heritage and history. And that prompted Mark Harper from the city's communications department to dig into more of the story. And he produced a really fantastic documentary. Don't have time to show the entire thing, but we're going to give you a little snippet of it. And it's really good. It's about a little over 30 minutes long, but well worth your time. It's an amazing story. And here's a little bit from Day's Pay.
In a sense, it is more than the story of a military operation. These planes, high in the skies over Germany, were a symbol of the unshakable unity of the Allies in their determination to fight together until victory and peace had been achieved.
One of the most well-known parts of the Hanford site was the Hanford construction camp. Hanford is, of course, one of the 3 sites of the Manhattan Project. Deliberately misleading name. You wouldn't want to call it the secret atomic bomb project. And the 3 sites are Oak Ridge, Los Alamos, and then Hanford, Washington. There was housing for about 46,000 people at the construction camp. And that was barrack-style housing, hutments, and trailers. Actually, the world's largest trailer court at the time.
Yeah, life for them, especially in the early stages, was a little bit rough. Definitely a lot of wind they had to deal with and heat early on. They just knew it was a construction project. The handout was given to them in March of '43. It's an important war project, and outline what their expectations were for safety and also to not talk. And during the interview, they were also told that if they were to speak about the project, that there were hefty fines and possible prison sentences. So, for the most part, the men didn't talk.
They all know it's some kind of defense project because they're working for the Army Corps, but very few would have known the actual purpose. Your average worker, your average construction worker, union worker, cafeteria worker, no. Many might have guessed, or at least guessed that it was some kind of weapon, but they would... One, most likely would not have known, and 2, certainly we're not talking about it.
June 2nd, 1944. On this day, 650 American flying fortresses inflicted severe damage on German defenses along the invasion coast. Farther north, 300 American liberators bombed military...
When it happened, of course, it hit the news and it hit the Sage Sentinel that American forces had finally made inroads into Fortress Europe. Max Blanchard, along with a few of his other co-workers, were wondering, what can we do to support the men and women who are fighting for us? So the request was made out to the War Department, what should we purchase? The answer came back fairly quickly, a B-17.
So Max Blanchard was an employee of the Hanford Engineering Works. Seeing the success of D-Day, but realizing the long struggle that Allied troops would have in retaking continental Europe, they wanted to do something to support the war.
Because when they come from other projects, other DuPont projects or Remington Arms projects, they knew they're making bullets, bombs, whatever. It was for the war effort. They knew they're making tanks or whatever the material was needed. Here, they're just eating sand and drinking beer and eating as much as they can at the mess halls.
And of course, all throughout the war, there had been war bond drives where celebrities and others had, extolled the public to give money to buy war bonds. But that can feel really abstract.
So this idea of buying this airplane was a real boost. It was a morale booster because it's like, now we're doing something.
Like I said before, no one really knew what Hanford was doing. They just knew it was involved in the war effort. And so you could see the appeal of a campaign like give a day's pay to purchase a bomber, because that bomber could then be that kind of manifestation.
Now they felt they were making a difference.
They solicited ideas and they came up with this idea of day's pay.
Colonel Mathias loved the idea, continued to move forward with it. Posters were put up around the construction camp as well as the city of Richland, asking people to donate a day's pay towards the aircraft. A contest was held to come up with the name of the plane. There were about 6 to 8 entries, I believe, that said day's pay, and so that was the decision.
And one interesting thing about the campaign, and one thing also to tie people to this campaign, was they basically gave shares, like stock shares, like paper certificates. When you gave the day's pay, you got your share of the day's pay campaign. You basically got a stock in that plane. So another way to physically tie people to that. And this was a special plane. Certainly to the people at Hanford, it was a special plane. In July 1944, a transport crew picked the plane up at the Boeing factory and flew it over to the Hanford Construction Camp airfield. There was a big ceremony. Thousands of people attended, school children, kids that were at the Hanford Construction Camp. People were so proud to see it. Thousands of people attended. It was July, of course, in the Tri-Cities area is a scorching month.
It was hot. And you can see it in the faces of the people. If the camera resolution was much better, you could probably see the beads of sweat coming off their foreheads up underneath their hard hats and hats. But Katie Bell Harris was who had lost a son earlier, was also a B-17 crewman, and she was chosen to be the one to christen the day's pay, and it was on the number 4 engine boss.
It was thousands of people attended to see the ceremony, and so Max Blanchard really hit upon, this really great idea, right, of really connecting people in Hanford to the specific war aim.
And then afterwards, the band played and the crowd all sang the Day's Pay song. And the 3-member ferry crew fired it up, took off, swung back over the top of the airfield, dipped its wings 3 times, and headed on its way.
And an amazing story it is. Not only that the airplane was purchased by the workers at Hanford, but also the airplane itself had a pretty incredible career in the European theater. Was not shot down, got a little bit of damage, but basically brought its crew home every time. And later on in the documentary, when you watch it, you can see that there's interviews with some of the crew or relatives of the crew, and they really felt it was not their airplane, but it was the airplane that belonged to the people of Hanford, and they just had the opportunity to fly it. And so it's a really interesting documentary. You can catch the entire thing, click on the link in the description. Well worth your time. A very well done documentary, and a great story that now the Days Pay Squadron is kind of moving forward. Obviously, there are not a whole lot of B-17s around that you'd be able to tell this story with, but you're going to do that with a PT-23, which is a great airplane because it was one of the primary trainers of World War II. And when you started the squadron, was there a thought that this would be the way you were going to take the squadron, or did it kind of evolve as you went on?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was pretty clear with the new unit initiative that, and after speaking to David and the gang down in Texas a few times, it was pretty clear that their idea was to get us into a PT-19, 23, or 26. So it is kind of, you know, where we envisioned starting. And then, you know, obviously when you petition to start a new unit, at least these days, I know we're one of the newest units. One of the things you do is you fill out a questionnaire, and it's what's the vision for the future. And our vision was, you know, get our first plane, get our feet under us, start, you know, performing the mission of the CAF. Hopefully 5 years or so down the road, you know, bring a T6 or an SNJ into the collection, and then maybe 20 years from now, 25 years from now, who knows? Maybe we're Air Base Pacific Northwest, and we can get a B-17 at RLD there and call it Days Pay and really, you know, sort of complete the circle. Because Days Pay, there's the history of Hanford and what they did and you know, the weapons they produced, and then there's Days Pay, and both of those things in Richland in particular, but all across the Tri-Cities. I mean, the kids in town know about them. The local high school team is the Richland Bombers. The you know, Richland High School has got probably a 40-foot wide mural of Days Pay painted on the side of the auditorium. It really is a part of the local history, and, you know, to a lesser extent the regional history, because you know, it was a big site, and now people know a lot about it, but you know, Days Pay and then the war mission that was carried out there is a really big part of the history. And, you know, we all really dig it. You know, it's pretty cool. It's pretty unique. And you know, that I guess that was the vision, is to move along those lines and see what happens, you know.
Very good. And to, you know, like you say, they're really having a vision for what the squadron's going to do, aside from, you know, the airplane itself, which is always central to any unit, but to have that Days Pay story behind it really gives you that much more kind of synergy to be able to you know, spread the news and to keep that legacy alive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing to be part of. You know, we all understand that it's pretty unique, and that's a lot of where a lot of the pride is derived from. You know, is that story, and sort of keeping that alive. So
this is one of the airplanes that's in the 12 Planes of Christmas, and we're you know, hoping to raise some money for it. We're a little bit. Few weeks into the campaign, we're already doing quite well with overall, but what are some of the things that, first of all, how much money are you hoping to raise for the airplane, and what will you be using that money to do?
So when we submitted for 12 planes, I think we put a goal in of $5,000, and our goal for that money is, so right now we are we're stable, right? We've got our hangar paid for through the end of next summer. We've got enough oil on the shelves to do 3 or 4 oil changes. You know, most of our insurance paid for the next year. This year, you know, so we received the airplane in August of 23. This year, we spent some time getting people checked out in it, and by the end of the summer, Jeff and George had and Bob Stoney had facilitated doing basically a mock-up ride program, was using some of our members as guinea pigs, effectively. You know, we put the canopy out there with the sign and the rally point, you know, computer and all that, and basically use the format to give some of our supporting members, you know, an opportunity to go for a ride in the plane. But we also wanted to shake down if we were going to be able to pull off a ride program. And basically, by the time, you know, in Washington right now, in Eastern Washington, it's very foggy, cold, and icy. So flying season's done. But just up until the weather turned, you know, they were able to get some guys up in the air and prove to ourselves that we're going to be able to pull off a ride program. So really what we're looking for is, you know, our primary mission with the plane was to get not a ride program going, but do the veterans flights. You know, go out and find those old fellows or you know, police officers and firefighters and all the heroes around the Tri-Cities there, and get the ones that want to go up in the airplane. And really that's what we're looking for, is using the $5,000, if we can get it, to keep our heads above water and to be able to you know, finance taking some of those people out you know, over this next year, and you know, accomplish the mission of getting them up in the plane and fulfilling that part of the mission, but also establishing our ride program so that we're, you know, we're stuck in for the long haul. Because I mean, right now we're 2.5, 3 years old. It's running on a shoestring, and we're, you know, we're fighting for survival. You know, we want to keep going. We want to get the word out. So that's where we are, and that's what the money would be used for, to just get us a little bit further along.
What's the plan for the airplane in the future? Are you looking? Obviously, you're trying to get qualified in the rides program, have that kind of worked out, but you know, taking it on mini tours, going to air shows and events. What's kind of in the plan?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, it's obviously it's the epicenter of the squadron, and we you know, we want to do all those things that the big guys are doing. You know, someday we want to have a cadet program. We want to, you know, we kind of consider our range in that airplane to be about 150 miles from base. But within 150 miles from base, if you you know, if you don't take into consideration trying to cross the Cascades, because none of us are very enthusiastic about that, there's Spokane, Washington, and Nampa, Idaho, and Hood River, Oregon, Bend, Oregon, Madras, and all those places are unfamiliar to people that aren't from the area. But the Evergreen Aviation Museum is in Madras. The Western Aviation Antique Airplane Museum is in Hood River. Spokane's got Fairchild Air Force Base. And, you know, Evergreen and Wham are world-class museums. And, you know, we maintain contact with them. You know, they're basically been friends of theirs since before Day Space Squadron started. Hangar 180 over in Lewiston, Idaho. Super good friends. You know, they bring their you know, they have P-40 and P-51, and they'll fly it over just for fun. And, you know, Walla Walla, where Air Base Arizona has, you know, they stop their tour pretty regularly in Walla Walla. So those are all in our region, and we want to be able to reach out and you know, go visit them and boost our membership with those populations of people too. You know, there are several places sort of midpoint across the Cascades where we have plans to be able to go meet the Rainier Squadron. They've got the AT-19 Stinson, a beautiful airplane. And there's a lot of, one of the things that we've been talking with them about over the past couple of years, sort of, daydreaming about the future, is taking the planes and meeting in the middle in the small towns up in the mountains that have little airstrips where these planes can get into. But, those kids in those schools wouldn't normally see a P-51 pull up and let somebody come poke around. But between the two of us, we might be able to get out there and show the kids the planes and, ignite some sparks and that sort of stuff. So, I mean, really, our vision is kind of for the whole spectrum of all the cool stuff that you can do when you're enthusiastic and you want to share the story. So,
yeah. And it sounds like you and the squadron so far have lots of enthusiasm and being relatively new squadron, already having a functioning airplane that you don't have to restore, you don't have to put a lot of things into it, is really kind of giving you a leg up to be able to move forward quickly. And I'm glad to hear that you're looking at going to some of the smaller towns that maybe not. The B-17 from Air Base Arizona probably isn't going to go into some of those smaller towns.
Right.
But to be able to bring some really cool World War II vintage airplanes and continue to tell this story is a great mission.
Yeah, we think so. And even just the little bit we've been able to do so far is just been a blast. I mean, we took the plane. Our first, I guess, air show appearance was the Moses Lake Air Show this summer. Happens every Father's Day weekend. Got blown out from the 75-mile-an-hour desert winds on Saturday, but we flew it up on Sunday for Father's Day, and we parked the airplane next to a couple F-18s, Marine Corps F-18s from the Death Rattlers were there. And they're over there checking out the plane going, man, I can't believe you guys know how to fly tail wheels. It's like, you're flying an F-18, come on. So Moses Lake was a Cold War airfield. It's got a 3-mile long runway, right? Wow. So you come in on a P-19 on a 1,500-foot strip. It's sort of a strange opportunity. It's just a little bit different.
What do you do with all that runway?
You don't use very much of it. That's where you kind of land on the number and then taxi in, And
I'm sure being a former military base is probably quite a wide runway as well.
Yeah, it's enormous. It's just huge. They Boeing, I guess that's probably accurate. So there a lot of international students come over to use that runway to learn to fly the very big planes, So there's a lot of traffic, and then Boeing over the past several years, as they've been working through their issues, they've been using it as a parking lot because they never stopped building planes.
Right.
They just quit delivering them. Right. So there's enormous, acres after acres after acres of parking lot full of the 787s and from all over the world, liveries that you'll never see anywhere else. And here you come putting in your PT-23, and you're the coolest airplane on the airfield, right? I mean, everybody's looking at it. So
that's awesome.
Pretty fun.
Well, speaking of flying, we have another video here, which is going to take us around the patch a little bit with the PT-23 Days Pay 2. Robert, who's doing the flying in this sequence we've been watching?
So that is our maintenance officer and soon to be unit leader Jeff Hanoff.
All right.
Piloting the plane. For that video, he was. I think that flight in particular was him test driving the camera setup that you're thinking about using during the ride program. That's Terry Clute there on the left. He's one of our Air Force veterans. He spent quite some time in Germany loading or handling nuclear weapons for the, I think it was the Thunder Chiefs back then.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's our Jeep mechanic. We acquired Dusty the GPW Jeep earlier this year, and he's an old hot rod guy, so he took it home and he that's Terry right there as well. He rebuilt the carburetor and everything, and I think David and everybody down at headquarters should be pleased to know that Dusty turns over and fires on the first crank now.
Very good.
Yeah, I think this is mock-up day. You can see we've added our day's pay.
Yep.
And CAF labels to the front by now, but that's Bob Stoney in the front. He was a naval aviator, and he's one of our pilots now, and can't quite make out which one of our members he's got in the back seat there, but he's one of our pilot sponsors. Another very, very experienced pilot. It's very good to have around.
Good. How many hours do you have in the airplane?
Boy, I'm only at about 8.
Okay. You got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah. So,
and before flying the 23, where did you get your tailwheel experience?
So I learned to fly tailwheel there at Richland, flying a 1940 Quarterfield CP-65.
Wow.
Which is a really cool plane, but it was pretty uncomfortable for somebody who's 6'1". They called those Skinny Bird. They were a little bit faster than like a J3, but they couldn't, didn't have the same useful load. But they're very tall on the cabin, but it's kind of like sitting on a stool. The rudder pedals are almost right under your knees, so they're just not very comfortable. But a really good, really cool plane to learn how to fly tailwheel in. And then,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and then I moved on from that to my RV4, and then we got this, and so I started flying that, the PT.
Okay. I know earlier you had mentioned that this is sort of desert area, but there was quite a bit of greenery in that footage we saw.
Well, yeah, right there around town. So Eastern Washington is the Yakima and Columbia River valleys are really big into agriculture. I don't personally know much about it, but apparently it's got something to do with if you irrigate desert, then you can control the water to the plant and control how it grows. But so it's a big area for potatoes and onions and not only that, but vineyards and pumpkins and gourds and squashes, and it really is like, it's pretty incredible. You go to the grocery store out there and you'll see vegetables that you never heard of.
There you go.
Pretty amazing.
I think maybe you should apply for a job with the Chamber of Commerce. You're selling this.
Yeah, it's an interesting place. Well, so last summer, before we actually had the plane, Tora flew out to Joint Base Lewis McChord to do the air show. I think that was middle of July. Well, at that point, they didn't even know we existed. I mean, we were brand new.
Yeah.
And talking to Denise after they landed, basically she was she was looking at the sectional, and they were going to go to a town called, I think they were going to go to Pendleton. And she got to looking for hotels, and all the hotels are, some distance from the Pendleton airport because it's up on top of the plateau. But she got to looking at Richland, and there's a few hotels that are pretty close. So our XO Scott, so he's super huge Warbird guy. He owns a T-28 and all that. He's walking out of his office down there in town, and he hears radials, and he looks up, and it's the entire tour group coming in to land at Richland, right? So he jumps in the Jeep and he drives over, and he introduces himself, and we ended up going out and having dinner with them. Got to know them a little bit, and they're like, oh, maybe after the air show we'll come back through this direction, and so they go off and do the 2 days of air show over on the west side of the mountains. Call us on Sunday afternoon and say, hey, we're ready to get out of here. We'll be there in 2 hours. And so, I sent out a last second email to the group there, and we showed up, went out to Scott's hangar and threw down a fajita dinner for them. They spent the night again in Richland, and we had a really good time. It's a great airport, and it's a really good bunch of people at that airport. It's a really good community, and it really is a good place to live, Trace. It's a good place to be. It's hot. It's really hot in the summer, but it's a good place. So.
Well, good. As we're wrapping up 2024, the airplane is in the 12 Planes of Christmas. Please, if you can, go support it, support the unit, help them continue to tell the story of Days Pay through Days Pay 2, the PT-23, and we appreciate anything you can do to help them out. But if folks would like more information about the squadron, or maybe get involved somewhere or another, what's the best way to do that?
So we do have a website. It's got some contact information. Our website is dayspaysquadron.org. And it's got information about us, but it's also got information about the original Days Pay. And some links to some interesting stuff like the City of Richland video and HistoryNet sort of synopsis of what Days Pay is all about. So. And like I say, there's contact information on there. So
very good.
That'd be the best place to find that.
Good. Any final thoughts before we wrap up tonight?
I don't. I really appreciate you having us on. It's I do enjoy talking about it and talking about the guys that made all this happen. It's only been a couple of years, and we've grown it, and I think it's going to continue to grow and prosper. And really looking forward to starting to work on that mission of taking the veterans for flights and showing the plane around a little bit more.
Very good. Again, if you can support the airplane any way you can, watch for it in the 12 Planes of Christmas. And we do appreciate anything you can do to support not only the PT-23, but all the airplanes that are in the 12 Planes of Christmas, plus the Restoration Grant Fund, which helps keep these aircraft flying. And more importantly than just the flying part is to be able to tell the story of World War II, and specifically, in this case, the B-17 Days Pay, and now the PT-23 Days Pay 2. So we want to thank you for joining us tonight. We'd like to hear your thoughts on the show, and any ideas you might have for future topics. Feel free to drop us an email at media@cafhq.org. Now remember, if you liked what you saw tonight, please share it on your social media platforms. We do appreciate that. And if you are a YouTube subscriber, just click that bell icon. You'll get notifications when new episodes of Warbird 2 are posted. Until next time, I'm Steve Buss, wishing you blue skies and tailwinds. Have a great night.